I built it, right? And if I want to tear it all down, then that's what the fuck I'm gonna do.
From the cinematography, the writing, and the performance of Damson Idris, along with the rest of the cast and crew, these 6 seasons of Snowfall along with the finale has proved one thing. Damson Idris mastered the role of Franklin Sane, and he certainly deserves his recognition for his award-winning performance. The writing did a great job in circling back around to season 1, where Franklin got the ending he definitely deserved. He ended up just like his father Alton, walking down the same street he, Leon, and Kevin used to walk down. Franklin Sane paid the ultimate price and watched his empire crumble. Those he loved are dead, in jail, or gone, and ultimately everybody around him decided Franklin didn't deserve his money. Now, whether you're chasing power, powder, or respect, or even a high or a dollar, ultimately it does have the potential to ruin your life. On the flip side, if you use money and power for good, you can make a positive change in the world, just like Cissy was trying to do with the homeless shelter. But Leon said it best, whatever he had was blood money.
It's blood money. If I can give it all back, I would.
In the end, Franklin got what he deserved for all the pain and suffering he caused his community and those around him. But the ending was also fitting for one certain individual, John Singleton. John Singleton, who started Snowfall, was given a fitting tribute as Franklin and Leon walked by 3 years later. A movie that was being shot in the neighborhood was Boys in the Hood, a tribute to the great John Singleton, who was the backbone and foundation of Snowfall. And so I'm sure he would have been happy at the efforts of not just Damson Idris, but the rest of the cast and crew, as they delivered arguably one of the best series in recent times. Now, there were a few questions I had going into season 6's finale of Snowfall, and they did tie up some loose ends. We got to see what happened to Peaches, but the questions around characters like Lucia and Dion still remain a mystery. But as we go into the events of the finale and how they delivered the perfect ending to Franklin Sane, we can't go on without mentioning one key player, Manboy. Manboy's words in season 4 was a foreshadow of Franklin's end. Now, the events of episode 10 started pretty much straight away after what happened after episode 9, after Cissy shot Teddy McDonald in broad daylight. He frantically calls Veronique to let her know Cissy shot and killed Teddy when he was about to transfer the money. Just when Franklin could taste what in his eyes would have been a victory, Cissy took it away, and rightly so. The question I think we should ask is, did Franklin Sane deserve all his money after everything he's done? Now, at this moment in time, he still had Veronique in his corner, who told him to breathe, calm down, and come home, so they could talk about it. And despite what everybody thought about Veronique, she still stayed in Franklin's corner for the time being. That was until he put his hands on Veronique, where she then realized she had to disappear, and her mother was right. She's seen men like Franklin Sane, and it would never be enough for Franklin. Now, the one thing Franklin hasn't touched a drop of throughout 6 seasons of Snowfall is alcohol, but when reality started to kick in, he takes a sip and he drinks until he ends up on the street, but in between, scrambling to hold on to any money or wealth he has left. Now, as Franklin's pager goes off, he calls Steven from the CIA, who tells him to turn Ruben over or face spending the rest of his life in prison, and Franklin was out of bargaining chips. He had to do as he was told. So without hesitating and despite all of Ruben's pleas, he puts him in the trunk of the car and drives to the location given to him by the CIA and leaves him there. No doubt, he's going to be tortured by the CIA for answers because he's someone who's a part of the KGB. Now, Franklin was desperate as he has been for the majority of season 6, and so he turns to Leon, who tells him he has 3 million. Now, Franklin promises that if Leon gives him the whole amount, he'd make him a partner in the Spring Street development, and in a few years' time, once everything has settled, he'll get back 10 times more. But Leon turns him down.
I'm the reason y'all got this fucking money in the first place!
All Franklin seemed to care about was his money and his properties. Cissy was sitting in jail and that had completely gone over his head, and he didn't even realize Cissy sacrificed herself. Cissy didn't want Franklin to have the money, and so Leon didn't want to disrespect her by giving him something she didn't want him to have. But ironically similar to what Teddy said to him in episode 9, Franklin tells Leon that everything that he has is because of him. But just when it looked like Franklin was about to threaten Leon, Leon's men weren't about to let Franklin threaten Leon or take his money, and so Franklin leaves. Now, later we see Wanda telling Leon that she's buying a one-way ticket to Ghana, and she'll figure out the rest when she gets there. He gives her some cash and tells her to start a new life, and at this moment in time, he wasn't sure whether he was going. But I think this conversation that he had with Cissy definitely changed his mind. Cissy tells him that one of the greatest tragedies was losing Franklin, but one of the greatest surprises was Leon, and their bond definitely runs deep. Leon was a son Cissy never had and someone who she could actually be proud of. So she tells him to go and be with his wife, get out of the life and come back when he figures out who he really wants to be. Something which he does later do, but we're going to get to that later on when we get to the 3-year time jump. Now as Cissy pleads guilty to murder, she continues and tells the court that she killed a CIA officer who helped the government flood the streets with cocaine. She then continued by saying the money was used to fund an illegal war in Nicaragua. Now Cissy wanted to burn everything down to the ground because they all had blood on their hands. Now as Franklin goes to visit Cissy, there wasn't really much empathy shown by Franklin. He does say that he'll get her plea tossed, but warns her not to run her mouth because they'll string her up in jail. But the conversation turns pretty nasty pretty quick when Franklin eventually makes it about money, and that's all it was for Franklin Sane. Despite looking at his mother in a prison jumpsuit, it was all about money for Franklin Sane, and so she stuck by what she told him in episode 9. She was done with him, and so without saying a word, she walks away. Now Franklin did come back for a second visit after the events that unfolded with Veronique. While Franklin was at Cissy's house, one of his biggest competitors knocked on the door, Paul Davis. He offered to buy Franklin out of his Spring Street deal, and how it was Veronique who approached him about the idea. But this was a deal that Franklin refused, and then he turned on Veronique, arguably the one person who was left in his corner. He told Veronique that he made a deal to sell the South Central properties so he could finance Spring Street for as long as possible, but she knew he made a huge mistake.
I built it, right? And if I want to tear it all down, then that's what the fuck I'm gonna do.
Franklin definitely built this empire brick by brick, but let's not get it twisted. He had the help of Uncle Jerome, Aunt Louie, Leon, and Cissy, and also Veronique, along with a few others along the way. Now something I previously mentioned was how Franklin was too far gone, and him putting his hands on around Veronique's neck was the last straw for her. When he goes to the bank later on to get a credit line, he learns that Veronique has pretty much emptied the account. She took around $800,000 before leaving, and Franklin only has himself to blame. The one person who told him to calm down and come back so they could talk about it, and made the best possible move in a bad situation by approaching Paul Davis to buy Spring Street. Franklin is the one who forced Veronique out. Now this is where Franklin returns for a second visit to Cissy, and this time he's more annoyed than before. The $37 million is definitely gone, and so is Veronique with every single last penny that Franklin Sane had. And so in a desperate move, he asked Cissy to sign over the ownership of the house so he could sell it. And this really was Franklin Sane losing touch with reality. He tells Cissy that technically he bought the house, but then again, Cissy didn't say a word, and this time Franklin Sane loses it. He curses and swears at his own mother, in really the most disrespectful way you could imagine. Now the Peaches mystery is one that the Snowfall fans have wanted a conclusion to, so let's just take it back for a moment to season 5. He was someone who was always by Franklin's side, but the writers left hints around how he was potentially suffering from maybe AIDS or a disease of some sort, or maybe how he may have been using. Now he was also someone who stole all of Franklin's money in the safe house, which is separate to the $73 million that Teddy stole. And once he realized what he'd done, he hired a private investigator to find his whereabouts. Now during the meeting with the investigator, he let Franklin know that he can't find Veronique, and he was also cutting ties with Franklin, but he did leave him with a gift, Peach's location. This gave Franklin a glimmer of hope, but that's all it was. All it was hope, and as they say, it's the hope that kills you. Franklin drives to a property 25 miles away and finds Peaches high, and he tells Franklin he still got some of the money left in a safe. And again, that gives Franklin hope. But as Peaches pulls and Franklin pulls, there was only ever going to be one winner in this situation, and Peaches bites the dust. Now as Franklin finds a safe, he turns the house upside down in hope of finding the combination while getting drunk in the process, but he had to resort to a locksmith. Now Miguel was the unlucky man who came across a desperate Franklin Sane, and he helped Franklin open the safe after Franklin shot and killed another junkie, only to find $12,000 left from $5 million that Peaches stole. Now after telling Miguel to put $12,000 in his pocket and telling him he can leave, Franklin shoots him in the back. The father of 3 kids who went to work in the morning, not knowing that that would be the last time they saw their father, and Franklin Sane really was the devil. 2 years later, we see DEA agent Tony Marino showing up at a farmhouse looking for Aunt Louie, one of the largest drug dealers in LA, and it seems that she's using the name Carla Huggins, and as Louie listens on, the owners lie, and she realizes this is the reality of her life. Gustavo was back where it all began, in the ring, and at least he found some peace knowing that Jamera was living in North Carolina, and she was safe. The boys also miss him and she'd love to see him again, which brought a rare smile from Gustavo. As another year passes by, Leon returns to the same streets he used to roll with Franklin and Kevin. A few kids tell him that someone's living in the house that once used to belong to Cissy, if that's what they call living. There's an eviction notice at the door as Franklin lets Leon inside, and we get the sense of how Franklin's been living for at least for the past year. Now, as they take a stroll, he says it's a long story with Wanda, but she's doing good and pursuing music, maybe something that will tie into the Snowfall spin-off later on. But just look at how the mighty has fallen. Someone who used to fly planes and earn millions of dollars, Franklin's turned into an alcoholic. His teeth are rotting away, he has no money. And for all of him chasing $73 million for the best part of season 6, he was just happy at the fact Leon gave him $20 so he could go and buy a drink, the same store he used to work at in season 1. So this was the reality of Franklin Sane. He was now living just to pay for his next drink, just like crackheads do to pay for their next hit. Leon then tells him about a new business venture, which was a free legal clinic, and so he could make good on what Cissy advised him, go to Ghana and come back when he has a purpose. So even though Franklin was calling him a yo-yo, he definitely had his reasons. Now as they walk by and saw the police taking Cissy's house, and even though Leon said he'll pay for the tax debt, Franklin says he's now free. So that concludes the story of Snowfall, and now that it's over, the ending was fitting for the events that took place in LA during the crack epidemic, where the CIA flooded the streets full of cocaine to fund a war in Nicaragua. Sadly, there were a lot of people who were caught up in the drug game that ended up with a grim fate. Some ended up in jail, others would have had to live with their consequences for the rest of their lives, and others got what they deserved. Franklin Sane may have not ended up in prison, he may have not ended up dead, but where he believes he's free, I believe he has a noose around his neck that was once around his father's. Even though at this moment in time, Franklin only may be an alcoholic, the one thing which once helped him build his empire is the same thing which can be looked upon as worse than death: addiction, something that will eventually give him a slow death.